But I was in the doctor's office, and they told me that I had 10 months to live. I was shocked, and my husband was shocked. He was there with me. And so I just accepted the doctor's diagnosis. And doctors have had a hammerlock on cancer. They've been telling the narrative of what cancer is about for a very long time. I went home to tell my son. I told him, and when I told him, I saw grief like I had never seen on his face and in his eyes. I was willing to just call it a day. And he was saying, no, I need you, No, I need you, Mom. At that moment, whatever cynicism I had been carrying in my life, I felt it lift off my shoulders. And then I felt peace. So I felt myself full of peace. So I feel like I was filled with the Holy Spirit. And I said to Julian, my son, I said, well, the doctor, he's just a man. And he has an opinion. But God only knows when I'm going to die. And so I think that if you're in a situation that's intolerable, then you have to think about, some people who are suicidal even. Why not end it now? If you're in a situation that is intolerable, then I think that for my husband too, what he says saved his life was his love for his family and was his love for his family. And that he couldn't, even though what he was going through was intolerable and painful, and he wanted to end it.
And also with suicide, it also has application of cyclicality, because you're always you're always having suicidal ideation because of your emotional state. It's never your objective circumstances, because there were people who would do anything to survive in the concentration camp. And the life there wasn't exactly luxury. Committing suicide because of a cyclical emotion, it's a permanent decision to a temporary problem. It's like using a nuclear bomb to kill a mosquito. I mean, I guess someone who's really nihilistic and depressed, you could tell them, what about your family? And he's going to reply, well, don't morality blackmail me.
But you can always say not now.
Yes.
How about just not now?
Yeah.
How about just not now?
How about not now?
How about just not today?
Exactly.
Yeah. Or just
Exactly.
not this minute. How about just not this minute?
People who have miraculous healing of terminal illness, I've noticed there are two common denominators. Number one is a promise to God, whatever that means. I think I know, because I did that on my psychedelic trip. I promised God that I would treat her better, and I saw myself as a
Oh yeah.
3-year-old kid. And since then, I changed the way I speak to myself. When I do something bad, I speak more as a parent than as a bully.
So what I want to say is,
Yes. Yeah.
No, it is what it is. You are one of the most stoic people I came across. You have this bedtime storytelling voice, which is always welcome. I know you've been meditating since you were 13, so
Oh yeah, a long time. Ridiculously long time.
I think your presence is a consequence of that. I've been meditating now for quite a while, but I was very undisciplined with it, so I have to put it in my schedule. How does your meditation look like? What do you do when you're meditating?
Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Starting therapy can be hard. The right therapist for you may not be in your area. BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy session as a phone call, as a video chat, or even via messaging if you prefer that. If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Captainese. Clicking that link helps you support this channel, and it also gives you a 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Again, go to betterhelp.com/Captainese. Clicking that link gives you 10% off your first month of therapy.
Well, one thing I can say about trying to meditate or to pray or to do anything actually to set up a good habit, you have to have a cue, right? It has to be cued. For instance, I go to bed pretty early. My husband always goes to bed after me. And he set up a habit of wanting to have ice cream after I went to bed. And so then he can't stop himself from going to have ice cream because there's a queue, right? There's a queue. And I said to him, if you don't want to eat ice cream, you have to replace that cue with a different behavior. And retrain yourself with a good habit if you want that. So when you're going to meditate, you have to do it, say, in the same place at the same time. There's some things you have to set up, and what you do before, whether you take a shower, whether you have breakfast. I mean, whatever it is that you do in the morning before you meditate, you have to do that every day so that the cue to meditate is the next thing. It's the next right thing. And then you'll do it. So when I started meditating in high school, I meditated at the end of the day. So I wouldn't allow myself to get into bed without doing some yoga. And sometimes I'd have been drinking because I was 16 and a brat. And so I would go out and I couldn't balance, right? And so it was really good for me because I would realize that I drank too much that night. And so it was a good self-reflection for me before I went to bed, is I couldn't do my yoga tonight because I stayed out too long with my friends. And so tomorrow I'm not going to do that because I don't know why I wanted to do yoga, but it when I started doing yoga, I thought, you know what, this isn't important to me now, but it will be important eventually. I think that was God just came in and told me, look, you're not willing to go to church. So maybe you could do this, and it's contemplative, and it's, you're reflecting on yourself. So you're taking stock of who you are, and you're not letting yourself get too far away from who you are, and it'll be a good practice for you. So I think that I was just intuitively, I knew this will be important later in my life. And as it turned out, I did meditate and do yoga till I was in my 50s, until I got really sick. But then when I got really sick, yoga wasn't enough for me because it wasn't from my culture. It wasn't something I really understood deep down to my biology, But Christianity is something that's been in my family for generations. And so when I needed to when I really needed something that I could really trust and give my life up for, it had to be something that I felt right down to my bones, like as deep as I could. And so I went back truly to Christianity, and that seemed to have been a good idea so far.
Yeah, that thing hits quite home for me now because I recently had to do that. It's not something that I want to talk about because how do I say, the statute of limitations is quite on my side yet, but something happened, and I really needed to talk, not to a person. But I needed to talk. A lot of times throughout your day, maybe you feel like you don't need to meditate. Maybe you feel like, I'm feeling good. And besides, I don't have time. But it's not only up until you start your meditation practice that you realized, wow, this is good for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I started talking a lot while I'm meditating. A lot of times it's not only up until I finish the meditation that I say, wow, I really needed this. And sometimes I just sit, I would sit for like even half an hour or more, and I would just let thoughts run. I'm not even trying to do anything, and I let them run until my mind is empty. And then sometimes I feel even like a physical sensation of joy, right?
Mm.
Physically. So it's somewhat like a some catharsical experience. It's incredible.
If I wake up in the morning, and often I wake up in the morning and there's something on my mind, but it isn't always something that is pointing in the right direction. It might be something that I want to control, or someone that I'm worried about. And at that point, then I turn to prayer very quickly, because I don't want to allow the repetition of destructive or not even destructive, but just not the best thoughts to be playing themselves in my mind. I was listening to a book just now, and it's funny because I'm going to be interviewing somebody in a couple of days who's talking about the same thing this book was talking about, and I thought, maybe that's a sign that this is what I should be paying attention to. And it was talking about manipulation and how we're being manipulated in our culture to think different things. And one of the things that I learned from both this fellow's book and now this woman's book was the 3 Ds: deny, debate, and demand. So if someone is going to try to manipulate something, they're going to present it and you're going to say no. So you're going to deny it. But then you're going to look at it again because it's going to come up, because it's something like the vaccine. So say like the vaccine, they said, oh, you're not good, we're not going to make you take this, and people said, no, we're not going to take this, we don't have to, maybe we'll take it, but it's up to us, we're not going to be told what to do. And then, well, it's good for people, the vaccine's good for people, and so then there's this debate, no, it's not good for us, well, it's good for us. Then there's this debate, and so now you've decided to debate it, because now you've decided that a vaccine is worthwhile debating. It's worthwhile debating whether it's worthwhile or not. And then after that, they can demand you take it because they've got you to repeat vaccine in your head enough times, it's become familiar. Just like eating bugs. There's no goddamn way, sorry, there's no way I'm going to eat bugs. I'm not eating any insects. And then, well, what about grasshoppers? What about, I had them in Mexico, what about grasshoppers? And so then, well, you think, oh yeah, I had a grasshopper in Mexico. So now it's in my head that we can eat insects. I've accepted the premise, and now the number of times that it comes up in conversation, it starts to be habit forming because I have listened to it often enough. And so then when they demand it, I've already decided, even though I don't even know I've decided. And so that's why I don't let these thoughts that come to me that I don't want to come, sometimes there's something you're thinking about and you don't want to think about it, and maybe because you're lazy, or maybe because you're slothful. The house is dirty, I should clean it. The house is dirty, I should clean it. The house is dirty, I should clean it. Finally you're like, yeah, okay, clean the house, and clean the house. But then there's those other thoughts, my daughter isn't living her life the way I want her to. You got to stop those thoughts because there's nothing you can do. You have to have faith that your daughter's going to find her way. It's not up to you. Stop those thoughts right now and don't let them get any further, because they're habit forming and they will infiltrate your life and they'll cause you grief, and then you won't get the good things done in life, or you won't notice the joy that is at your door. And I'd like to hear more about how you found joy by letting your thoughts continue.
And by the way, this manipulation must be very effective. I mean, self-talk is probably the most important conversation you're going to have throughout the day.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a boiling frog type of strategy that is self-inflicted. You're doing it one step at a time, and before you know it, you're just there.
Yeah.
Do you pay attention to your thoughts often throughout the day?
Yes. All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. As I go to sleep, when I wake up, throughout the day.
I recently started doing that. And I also recently started paying attention to what I say, because I used to lie about very unimportant things and it didn't bother me. So for example, I would say I can't be there because I'm busy. Now, it's not a big lie, but I felt like you're reducing your consciousness little by little with each and every one of those white lies. And at the end of the year, it adds up. Now I'm happy about the fact that when I say something that is not true, no matter how small of a lie it is, I don't feel good. And I feel good about not feeling good about it, And I recently asked God, what do I need to work on next? And by that, I meant more in a business type of way,
Mm-hmm.
career.
Mm-hmm.
But just like psychedelics, he said, forget about that. This is what you actually need. The next project is an attack on my character. Actually, an attack on the flaws in my character.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel it.
Well, that's a really worthwhile thing to do, I think. And it'll be something that you do over and over again because we're flawed no matter how deep we go. Right? So this isn't something you think, "Okay, I'm done. I'm okay now." Well, no, you aren't, because uh you're going to run up against the world, and whatever your action, the action that you take is, and whatever happens is going to inform you further about who you are. That's why we have to get out there, and like that's why we have to speak to one another, right? Because we need to inform ourselves about who we are. And so we have to ask questions, and we have to listen to see whether we're on the right path or not. And it's a very narrow path. It's a very narrow path. I spent my life in a very willful manner. My dad taught me one thing when I was little. He tickled my feet and told me not to laugh, to have willpower and not laugh. And so none of us have ticklish feet. All four of us, nobody has ticklish feet in my family, because we learned not to laugh. But I didn't know why he taught me that. But recently I was reading, and willpower is so that you're not swayed by little things. Little things then cannot sway you. You can stay steady. And so I thought, oh, thank you, Dad. I mean, I knew it was a good idea, but I didn't know why. He probably didn't know why, but he knew it was good. He didn't know why. And so he just taught me the play part of it. But I did eventually figure out that willpower is a good thing, but self-will is another thing. And that's how I went. That's how I figured out what I was going to do next. It was all self-power. It was all self-will. It was, what do I do next to further my agenda. And that took me for a long time. And I got myself through university doing that, because I'm pretty, I was talking to someone who's a soldier. I was talking to a soldier yesterday, and I was talking to him about how when I'm in the gym and I have to lift a weight, and the weight's kind of heavy, I can kind of switch off and do my 10 reps without, and it's too heavy and it's too much work, but I can switch it off so that I know that there's 10, I can do 10, and then it's done, right? And he said, when you go into a place where, say, there's been a bomb, you go into a school maybe where there's been a shooting and there's kids that are bleeding, and as a policeman, you have to walk by those kids and get to where the goal is, because you have a goal. And so they have to actually switch themselves off so that they don't take care of those suffering individuals that they would want to, but they have to stay on the goal because there's a goal in mind. And that was very cool. I thought that was very cool, because I've done that in my life, but in the end it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. I led myself down paths it wasn't God's plan. It was my plan. I probably listened to I was not bad at listening to my intuition. So it wasn't like I was way off track. But I wasn't directly paying attention to what was God's will. And that was a mistake.
I was still struggling with that. I still am a little bit. It's a daily practice. You have to remind yourself
Yeah.
every day to let go of control, because naturally I want to have it. And also just in life now, as I progress throughout my career, at the beginning people tell you where you have to be. You have to be there, and we're going to talk about this, and this is how it's going to happen. Then as you're progressing, well, people start asking you, so when do you want to be there? What are we going to talk about? You tell us. But at the same time, you still have to be you still have to be used to letting go of the control to God. Well, even if your personal life, you are taking more and more of that control and the authority. So, and I don't know, tomorrow I'm going to debate a nihilist who is also an atheist, And I just already know I'm gonna blow it, like because he has so many rational.
No, but you can just say, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I'm going to let God show me the way. That's what I do before I go on stage with my husband. I tell myself I don't know anything. I've prepared to the best of my ability, but I don't know what I should say and what I shouldn't say. And there's thousands of people out there. I don't know. But I pray before I go on stage, uh, to give me the strength and the courage to go out there and to say the next right thing only. That's all. The next right thing, and let it come to me. And so that's what you can do in your debate too. You can let it come to you and listen, because you're going to be listening. And if you're listening, then you'll see where to go.
And just I mean, this letting go of the control, I don't know how to explain it, but every time I let God take control, my life just turns out for the better.
Yep. I know. Isn't that remarkable?
It's remarkable. And and you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So sometimes something bad happens that I just feel like, wow, this is totally unexpected. This is such a bad event. And then it's not up until some time passes and then I look back and I think to myself, oh, you did it again, God. You
Yep.
have your creative ways. I didn't see that coming. And
Right.
it makes sense, right? Because it's an intelligence. Well, God knows things about you that even you don't know. And it knows that about every single person in your life.
Mm-hmm.
How can I compete with that? How can I compete with the plan of intelligence that knows everything about me and everyone else?
And to think he has a plan for you. Isn't that so cool? He has a plan for you
Yes.
if you could just pay enough attention and move in a manner that is uh, deliberate. One The next right thing, and then the next right thing, and then the next. Then you'll get to where you're supposed to be, and you won't have planned it.
Well, like you have a vision, you have a goal, and how you get there is none of your business.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
And it also helps you to live in a present moment. That's also something I used to struggle with. Everything I did was, I wasn't there. I'm
Yeah.
in the morning, I'm eating breakfast, but yeah, I'm eating breakfast, but I'm thinking about 100 different things. So what am I actually doing? Just thinking about the future and worrying about the future. That's a phenomena that only human beings are capable of.
Hmm.
It's like going to the IRS. I want to pay the tax on the income that is coming. Yeah, but you haven't earned anything yet. No, I want to pay it though. Every time you worry about something, it's almost never does it happen exactly how you predict it's going to happen.
No, that's right.
I mean, human beings will always be suffering our intelligence, right? We will always be suffering the discovery of time. It's a rejection of life, actually, because life happens in the present. So every time I feel like I'm thinking about something else that is not the present, I'm rejecting life, basically.
Well, it seems that way. I know that for myself, I'm a grandmother, so I've been around for a while. I have children, I have grandchildren. And so now I have wee little kids again. And I already went through that. I had my little kids. I worried about my little kids, and I put them through school and got them, now they're grown and they're married and all of that, and that's all good. But then they had more kids, and so now I got more kids. Now I have to pay attention to these kids.
When you do have a kid or a grandkid, you're forced to be in the present because I see these people with kids and also with pets. These things force you. You have to be present. You have to be here, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
What advice would you give to young single people looking for relationships, people in their 20s?
Well, when I was in my 20s, not so much myself. My sister-in-law, so my brother's wife, she told me that she loved her dad. She had a good dad. He didn't live to be very old, but he was around when she grew up, and she loved him. And so she wrote a list of attributes that her father had, and she prayed to find that man, and that was my brother. And so she said that that worked very well for her. So I thought that was very interesting. I never did that. I never did that. My relationship with my parents was complicated. I loved my dad. He was a great man, but he was kind of a wild man too. And so he was hard to understand. He was a bigger than life personality, so it's no wonder I married Jordan Peterson, because Jordan didn't seem out of the ordinary to me, because I had this man in my life who was just, he used to embarrass me all the time because his voice was so loud, and he was always the center of everything. Now I have a little granddaughter who's just like him. She's going to be the life of the party, and I think, oh man, you've got a firecracker on your hands. But the people that you have in your life are going to inform you about who you should choose. So you decide who you admire in your life. Think about that. Maybe write a little list about what it is that you admire in them. And then you meditate on that's what you're looking for, so that you can see it. When we went to buy a house in Boston, we weren't in Boston very long. We didn't know Boston at all. We wrote a list of what we wanted. We wanted a road that wasn't well traveled. We wanted to be near a school because the kids were really young. We wanted to be near a park. We wanted it to be kind of a cul-de-sac, so there weren't lots of cars going by, so the kids could play on the street, because I think playing on the street is so much fun. And so we had a number of things. But when we found the house, we said, oh, that house is too small. But when we looked back at our list, oh, it actually fulfilled everything on our list. So it's really good to think about what you are looking for, because you might not notice it when you find it. And that's one thing. Now, part of the mistakes that I made were, I never always said what I wanted. I had a few sins of omission where I would keep private those things that I wanted. So I don't know why I thought it was important to not say what I needed. Something I learned when I was younger, I guess. And you don't want to be always proclaiming everything that you need and you want, but when it comes to a point where you have an opinion about something and you feel it strongly, it's best to voice that opinion, and that goes along with the people that you're going to be with. So you want to, and I think that when you first meet someone, you should meet them with other people so you can see what they're like among other people. Sometimes you meet someone, say, because people meet other people online now, right? So sometimes you hook up online, and then maybe you speak through email, I don't know, and then maybe it's a telephone call, and then maybe it's a coffee. But by then it's still been you and this other person, you and this other person. So it's still pretty small, and you can't tell what someone's like, not very well, until you see maybe who their group of friends, but not just their group of friends, what they're like in a restaurant and how they treat the serving staff. What you want to see, what kind of person they are, and where they think they sit in terms of the hierarchy. Are they a domineering person who talks down on people, or are they someone who feels that other people have the same value as they do? But you have to decide what it is that's important. But I think getting yourself in situations where you can see what that other person is like early on is helpful, because I think that first interaction, because everybody's going to be on their best behavior when they first meet, right? They're going to be, and they won't necessarily be who they are in normal life. So you got to get out there in normal life to see what people are like. Now, people who live together they're not as successful in a long-term relationship. Getting married is more successful, right? So it is better to date and then get married. Living together is, I think that maybe most people know this now, but it was overrated, and it was something that was done a lot when I was a young woman. So everybody lived together before they got married, and I lived with Jordan for maybe just a few months before we were married. He was pretty adamant that we got married. He felt it was necessary in order to be doing the next right thing. And he was already, when he was 23, he was already looking and realizing that to tell the truth and to do the next right thing was more important than anything. And I think that's probably why he's got to where he is now, is because he started so young. So for young people to start that, telling the truth, that's a, you, if you don't tell the truth, then it's off.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, that it's
yeah,
just off.
yeah.
That you have to tell the truth. And that was the only rule that he had at the beginning, was to tell the truth. And that was a good rule. And I'd had never had anybody tell me to tell the truth before. Not really. I mean, my parents implied it, but they didn't really say it as directly as he did. And I did. I just told him the truth. I went through my life for about 6 months. I went back and looked through all my life, and I thought, yeah, I can tell the truth. I just looked at everything I was doing to see if I was sinning, how much I was sinning. And then I came to him and I said, okay, let's do this. But something that I learned later was I was still committing sins of omission. So even though I was telling the truth, I still sometimes wasn't saying what I needed. And so sometimes he wouldn't know it. He wouldn't know it because I wasn't saying anything. But later, it would have been something that maybe I would have been disappointed never happened, but it was because I never said what I wanted. So even though, you might think, oh, I'm going to break everything if I say what I want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You got to say what you have to say.
Still, it's a lie in a tuxedo in a way, right? And I think just living together without the marriage, it's like a refundable relationship. One leg in, but one leg out, so you can just have enough safety rope in your hands. Deciding to tell each other the truth is really remarkable. I mean, this is the point of a relationship, is to have someone who you can be honest with. Because sooner or later,
Yeah.
you're gonna, even if they're putting their best foot forward, which they should, so that you don't run away, and the other way around, sooner or later you're gonna want to know what's in the dungeon. You're gonna want to open the other drawers, right? I think actually this is it's a little bit off topic, but I figured this is the difference between someone who is narcissistic and someone who is not. Because I think a narcissist, this is where they will stop. They want to know just enough about you so that they have a perfect picture in their head, and they don't want to go any further because they don't want to leave the fantasy. A lot of people think that narcissists are just people who are grandiose and think best of themselves, but actually, it's all about living in a fantasy. So he takes a snapshot of you, then he photoshops it, and he's interacting with that snapshot instead of with the real person. They do that because they don't want real life. They just want a fantasy. I have no idea why I'm talking about this, but anyway,
Well, narcissism's because it's such uh, it's very popular right now to talk about. And because on social media, it's it's part of our life now, like it
yeah,
never
yeah.
was, right? They were always, what, 3% of the population? Who knows? Because it's actually working now in society. It never worked. Narcissists would always be kind of, not that guy. But now it's virtual, and so they have the run of the road. So I don't know what's going to happen. We're in a weird time um, in terms of delineating what should be successful and what shouldn't. Who should be successful and who shouldn't. It's changed, and who knows where it's going. Hopefully, if we talk enough, we can keep it on
Yeah,
the up
well,
and up.
I mean, it really would help if we didn't exchange our integrity and responsibility for victimhood. Online,
Yeah.
you see a lot of people claiming to be victims of this and that, and those are the real narcissists. I mean, you can also say that someone who's paranoid is also a narcissist because you're that important, really. But I think
Well, the
these,
victims are terrible, right? That goes back to Cain and Abel,
yes,
right? Because Cain was the victim, and look what he did. So then it runs into oppressor oppressed, and that's Marxism. So the victimization and the Marxism
Well,
come together somehow too.
it's about victim points, right? It's all about who has more victim points. So a woman has more
Yeah,
victim points
yeah,
than a man. A black person has more than a white person. And then if you're black and you're a woman and you're gay on top of that, then that's an extra victim point for you. And victim points are important because they dictate claim who can claim what reality is.
yeah,
They're the ones
yeah.
who have the say what is offensive, what is not, and how they are feeling is to be the reality.
And that's really horrible because Cain's descendants were Ham, and Ham was the beginning um, of mass artillery and war. And so that's where that leads. It leads to war. So it's really a bad idea.
I want to touch on your miraculous healing. Just briefly for those who don't know. 2019, you found out you had terminal cancer.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind in that moment?
Well, October 2018, I was told that I had a renal cell carcinoma, which is a cancer of the kidney that grows a millimeter a year, and it doesn't really harm you. So people don't die from it. You should have surgery and take it out, but it's not going to kill you. And so that's what I was told I had in 2018. And so then I had surgery March of 2019 and had half my kidney removed. And then they biopsied what they took out and found out that actually wasn't what I had. So then 6 weeks after I had my first surgery, I went back to the doctor and he told me that I had 10 months to live, that they had found out that I had something called a Bellini tumor. And a Bellini tumor is so deadly that most of the people who have suffered from that are dead already, and they diagnose it after they're dead. So it kills you fast. But I've had lots of dietary troubles, right? I've had lots of health troubles in the past. So that's why I was on a carnivore diet. And so I started a carnivore diet in January of 2018. Now, probably by that time, the damage was done. And I already probably had the beginning of cancer by then, because it was October when I was diagnosed. And it was March the next year that I had it removed. And that's supposed to kill you within a year. But it had only gone into one lymph node. And I think it's because I was on a carnivore diet that it really was a slow moving cancer. So I think in that way, I was fortunate to be able to have it diagnosed. And I didn't have any symptoms of cancer. And I think this happens to people sometimes. They suffer from something else. They give them a CT scan, they see a shadow, and then they investigate it. That's what happened to me. I had something else. They did a scan, they saw a shadow in my kidney, and then when they investigated it, that they found out I had cancer. And then, of course, I had the more terminal cancer because they were biopsying it. But I was in the doctor's office, and they told me that I had 10 months to live, and I thought, I was shocked, and my husband was shocked. He was there with me. And I thought, well, my mom died at 70. My aunt died at 65. My uncle died at 59. Maybe I'm going to be one of these people in my family that dies young. It's possible because I have had that in my family. And so maybe I'm one of those. And so I just accepted the doctor's diagnosis in the office. Even though I've been quite skeptical of doctors my whole life, at that moment I wasn't, for whatever reason. Doctors have had a hammerlock on cancer. They've been telling the narrative of what cancer is about for a very long time. So that's probably why. Anyway, I went home to tell my son, and I told him, I think. I told him, and when I told him, I saw grief like I had never seen on his face and in his eyes. And I realized that his mother was dying, and he was grieving this news, and that he had way more love for me than I had for myself. I was willing to just call it a day And he was saying, no, I need you, no, I need you, Mom. And at that moment, whatever cynicism I had been carrying in my life, I felt it lift off my shoulders. And I really felt something lift off my shoulders, which was very weird. I've never felt anything like that before. And then I felt peace. So I felt myself full of peace. So I feel like I was filled with the Holy Spirit. And I said to Julian, my son, I said, well, the doctor, he's just a man. And he has an opinion. But God only knows when I'm going to die. And so I'm going to accept whatever treatment comes my way, because the doctors are good at that. And I'll accept whatever help my family provides me. And I will go forward in the spirit of gratitude. And that's from that time on, that's how I felt. So it seemed like that moment in time taught me that the only important thing I could do was to be grateful. And it was funny because, I had the surgery. It went well. They got the cancer out, but then I had a complication that lasted for months and months, and they couldn't find the problem. So I just kept having this problem. And finally they found me a surgeon down in Pennsylvania to go and go into an interventional radiologist that can diagnose holes in your lymph system. And the lymph system's like a spider web in your body, right? It's remarkable they can find anything or do anything with that. But they put dye in the lymph system, and then they look on an MRI for plumes, and then they can find if there's a leak. And they did that, and they couldn't find anything. But on my way, before I went down there, I had a priest bless me, and he said, pray on gratitude. That was his prayer. He prayed for me, but then his advice was to pray on gratitude. And so I did. I went down to Pennsylvania, and he gave me 9 days of prayers, and on the 5th day of prayer, the hole in my lymph spontaneously healed. And I had told Jordan in June that I'd be better on our anniversary, and that day was our anniversary. So that was pretty remarkable.
With people who have this, what they call a spontaneous healing, miraculous healing of terminal illness, I've noticed there are two common denominators. Number one is a promise to God for whatever that means. I think I know, because I did that on my psychedelic trip. I promised God that I would treat her better, and by her I meant myself, and I saw myself as a
Oh yeah.
3-year-old kid, and since then I changed the way I speak to myself. When I do something bad, I speak more as a parent than as a bully. Promise to God of some sort, and then a spiritual, not really awakening, but something happens to you spiritually, which is something that you described. Was there any promises that you made? I know it sounds silly, but
I did. I made a promise. It was early on, before I knew I had a terminal. I think it was anyway. It's hard to remember the timeline exactly, but I did pray to God, and I said that if you see it in your heart to allow me to live, I promise that I will speak publicly about this.
okay.
And it's very interesting how things have gone since then, because I've spoke publicly about this so much and I had no way to do that before. So it was, well, who knows? You never know what's supposed to happen. But I did. That was my prayer. Yep.
I mean, this story is almost as well known as Jordan's clean your room thing. It's getting there. Do you? But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
also, well, you two are very busy traveling around. Do you ever get burned out?
Well, we've done a lot of pruning of our trips to make them work. And this time we're going on tour again in February, because Jordan's wrote a new book. and we're going to talk about a new book. And this time we're going to do 3 talks a week. So we're going to travel from 3 different cities a week and have 4 days in one place every week. And that's different. Before, I think we were probably traveling to a different city every day, 5 days a week. And that was a lot. And it wasn't just for us a lot. So it's a lot for the team that we have with us, you know? And so it isn't just Jordan and I. And Jordan and I aren't young, you know, we're older. But part of this only eating meat and drinking water is we don't drink any alcohol. So we're never hungover. And that helps a lot. That gives us our energy. Because we're eating meat, there's no inflammation in our bodies because it's anti-inflammatory. Carbohydrates are inflammatory, so like lots of people can digest carbohydrates fine, but they are inflammatory. So if you have any inflammatory troubles, then carbohydrates feed that. Meat doesn't. So it keeps you very thin and satiated. Your blood glucose doesn't go up and down, and we always have an afternoon nap. So I organized a nap for him between 3 and 5 every day. We'd go out for dinner and then have a show because he's up till about midnight. So he has to have a couple hours in the afternoon where there's no interviews, nobody, just 2 hours where it's just you by yourself. And I take my own hotel room. So we each have a hotel room. So we each get good sleeps and we each have enough private time that all of this public time doesn't become too much.
Yeah, that's important. I also do this. I structure periods of time where I don't necessarily sleep, but I call it intentional laziness. I would select an activity that is strictly non-productive because I used to be obsessed with having only activities that I would label as productive, but now it's like watching a movie or something, and I will put it in my schedule. I treat it as a task, and that's something that really helps. If you let your vices take over your life, if you let the worst part of you win, where would you be at the moment? I think this is a part of Jordan's understand myself or plan for the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So if you let your bad habits have control, where would you be in 5 years? Yeah. I always thought I'd be homeless in 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's what I thought. If my bad habits got out of control, I'd be homeless.
Why?
I don't know if that's true anymore, but it used to be because my idea of accepting the doctor's prognosis and going home to my son and then seeing that he loved me more than I loved myself, um, I'd be willing to let everything go. And I wouldn't see the necessity to hold on to things. And in a way, that's a good thing because you're not supposed to be attached to things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're supposed to take care of yourself, right? You're supposed to take care of yourself so that you are living out whatever it is you're here on earth for. So we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves. And I didn't have that straightened out in my head well enough. So I might not have done that.
Well, have you ever felt like, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but because being a part of Jordan's journey, it's a big thing. Have you ever felt like you were neglecting your future projects or hobbies, for example?
The first year, when he first became more well known, I thought, okay, uh, he's going to now be a public figure. It was obvious, right? Oh, he's now a public figure. And then I had to decide, what am I going to do? Because so far up till now, I've been his wife. Um, how is that going to work now? And so then I decided to go along with him. And so then I did go along with him. But for the first year, I worked logistics. I made sure he got to the show, made sure he had food, he was nourished, and he had sleep. And I watched his talks, and then I would tell him why they were better than others. compared because of his activities during the day, because I could tell sometimes he was too tired, and he was too tired because of how he managed his day before. So I did all of that stuff, but I stayed. I could sit right out in the crowd, and I could go out and talk to protesters because nobody knew who I was. So I could go talk to protesters, see what they were there for and stuff. And I used to do that, and that was fun. It was fun to be anonymous, but I had this thought in my head: what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Right? It was always nagging in my head: what am I doing here? And so then after the first, that was 2018. Then I got sick. And Jordan got sick, and then COVID tyranny happened, and then after that we were going to go on tour again, and I thought, oh, well, this time I need to do something that's meaningful to me, because last time there was a nagging thought in my head. So I decided to start a podcast because I'd been praying the rosary, and I thought, oh, I could talk to people about this. So I'll start a podcast, and I can do that on the road because I just need my laptop and a light, and I'm good. So I started a podcast. But when we first went on tour, I didn't do my podcast because we were sharing a hotel room, and he would come in late at night, and then I would get up early, and I would scramble around in the dark to find my clothes and to get my rosary, and I'd go out in the hallway to pray. And then in the afternoon he'd have a podcast, so I'd like lay on the bed and read a book, and I wasn't doing my podcast. And he wasn't feeling very well. He was getting sicker and sicker. He was not getting better like he was supposed to get better. And we were close to home, and I went home for the weekend. And while I was home, I remember I was in the basement, and I prayed again. I didn't realize I was praying, but of course we don't know what we're doing. I was praying, and I said, what do I have? I asked, what do I have to do? I would like to go back on tour. I like touring. I want to be with my husband. How am I going to do this? And I heard God say, get your own hotel room. And I thought, no way. Like, no way. Really? Get my own hotel room? So I phoned my friend. I said, God told me to get my own hotel room. And she said, yeah, do it. She said, good idea. So I called our assistant. I said, book all for the rest of the tour, book my own room. So I went back on tour, and the first night we didn't have a talk. And so we spent the evening together, and then we watched a movie, and then I got up to go to my room, and he said, well, we don't have a talk tonight. I said, I got my own room. I'm going to my own room. And so I went and stayed in my own room. And at first, he didn't quite know how to take it, but he trusts me that I'll tell him the truth. So he was willing to give it a chance. And then as time went on, he works later than me, so I didn't have anybody wake me up when they came in at night. And I could get up and open the curtains. I could book my podcast. I could do a podcast in the day. He could do whatever he was doing in the day. I could have a nap. We'd meet for supper and go out to the show. And every day would be like that. But I had my own place so that I could do my own things. And, that first year I was asking. And then for the first half of the tour, I didn't know why I was so discontent. But it was because I had, again, not done what I needed to do. So it was another sin of omission, right? That I had said I was going to do something, and then I didn't carry through. And so then I carried through, and I was much happier, and so was he.
Well, I mean, if it's every thought or idea that you get throughout the prayer, I think it's probably a good idea. Well, I mean,
Right.
yeah. And I think, for what it's worth, you listening to so many of his lessons, even if you were asking yourself, what am I doing there? I think it really happened for a reason, because you seem to be extremely advanced in storytelling, and you grab people's attention when you speak on your podcast, and you really sound like you've been doing this for the past 15 years, honestly. And so all these Jordan's lessons you went to, it really, I think it really took you to a whole new level as a speaker yourself.
Yeah, I think it did. But my dad was a storyteller.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, my dad was. He went to Hawaii in the 70s, and there was a famous Hawaiian talk show host called Don Ho, and my dad got up on stage and told jokes on Don Ho's stage. And so even though my dad was he wasn't a comedian or anything, but he told Jimmy Durante jokes, and he did a great job. Jimmy Durante was like a 1920s guy who used to tell amazing jokes, and my dad could tell them, and everybody laughed, and everyone loved his stories. In fact, my dad just passed away on December 11th, and that's an interesting story because my dad passed away on December 11th, and Jordan stayed for maybe 2 days after my dad died, and then he had to go up to his parents' place because his mom and dad were needing help in organizing their house because they're also getting old. And I went down to the States to be with my daughter because she actually had a baby the same day my dad died. So we called her to say my dad had died, and she said that she was starting to show, so she was going to have a baby that day, and later that afternoon she had a baby. So it was quite a day, right? My dad died and a baby was born. I said maybe that's what life is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
But it's really something to have something like that happen. But I went back there, and she was very busy with her baby. So she was in her room, and she has a 6-year-old daughter, and she was going to school, and she had a nanny because, my daughter had just had a baby, so she had a nanny who was taking care of her. So my husband was gone, my daughter was busy, my granddaughter was busy, and I was alone for about 5 days. And I was grieving. And grief is a strange thing, you can be fine 1 minute, and then somebody can say something and you'll cry, right? So it comes and goes. It's not like sadness. It comes and goes. And so I knew I was grieving, but I was doing okay, I thought. But I was, I had told my husband before he left, I said, you going up to see your dad 2 days after my dad dies makes me think when your dad dies, I'm going to leave 2 days after your dad dies. I said, that's not a good thought to have.
Yes.
So we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it, and we came to an agreement, and he left. But I think my dad gave me a gift because that week I was looking for relief from my grief from my family. I was looking to my husband to help me with my grief. I was looking to my daughter. I was probably looking to my granddaughter, someone to relieve me. But I had my weekly meeting with my Catholic priest, and I admitted to him that I was feeling resentment that week, and he said, did you pray about it? And I thought, yeah, I did. And then I thought more deeply, and I thought, did I pray about it? Like, did I actually take my resentment and ask God to help me with it directly? And as soon as I thought deeply about that, I realized that I had been looking to people for relief instead of to God for relief. And so that night, so that was about noon, that night, my brother sent me my father's obituary, and it was beautifully written. It showed him for who he was. He was a gregarious man with generosity and kindness, and it was truthful. It was a very nice story, and I started sharing it on Messenger. Everyone that my dad knew, I shared it, and I shared it. I shared it so much that the spam notice came on and wouldn't let me share anymore. And so then I went out, and I came back in, and I shared it some more until the spam message came. And then I went out, and I came back, and I shared it some more. I shared it like 36 times. I shared it, and then I started getting all these responses back, and they were stories of how people had remembered my father, and I started to cry. And I thought, oh wow, I thought now I'm grieving. Now I'm grieving. I was trying to get something from my husband and my daughter and my granddaughter. But when I asked to get what I needed from God, then I could give back. I could give to everyone, and because I could give to them, they gave me back. And that's how it works. You have to go, you can't turn to people for your misery. You have to turn to God. And now I know that. And I think my dad, he died right when that little boy was being born, and he got born a month early. He wasn't supposed to be born then at all. He wasn't supposed to be born till January 9th, and he was born December 11th, but he was 7 pounds and 20 inches. He was plenty big to be, he's, a good baby. He was a premature, but you would have never known he was premature. But my dad died that same day, and my husband had to go take care of his parents, and so my dad thought, I'm going to teach Tammy a lesson here. She's going to find out when I die that she's got to go to God.
I mean, grief is not something you can solve on a local level, so to speak, you know. I mean, it's like going to McDonald's asking for a steak. You're just not gonna get it. You need some
Right.
things are forgot, and like throughout the day, I know as well. Sometimes something happens, and I can tell myself, okay, this happened right now. I'm not gonna fix this, but tonight I'm gonna talk to God about it, and I'm gonna take
Yep.
this, and I'm gonna take it to
Yep.
Him.
Yep. 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 Even the biggest things and the smallest things.
And especially the biggest things. Just trying to solve it on my own is I give up. I can't do it. You know, I'm humble enough to it's too much. It's too much.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, but most things for me are too much, I realize now.
Yeah.
And I realized that I probably wasn't doing many things that I was doing because I was trying to do it myself. And I didn't have what it takes to do it myself.
Well, it's a humbling experience also to know that in this movie you are not the director, and you know you're just a sailor. And I think that when you play your part, let's say God is a director and you're the actor, I think your part is precisely telling the truth. I think this is
Yeah.
your part.
Right. Otherwise you can't follow the proper line. You'll lose the way.
What I'm actually thinking now is these dating coaches, for example. I just watched a video of how to how to properly ignore women, ignore her so that she likes you better. And
Oh
it's like,
yeah.
why, just
Right,
be
right,
honest,
right.
why are you ignoring the person that you know you like? This is the person you should be interacting with. If anything, you should be ignoring the rest. You're manipulating yourself and you're literally lying to yourself. I think that most of the advice from dating coaches is just is really is just trash, you know. I think it's and I think your husband talks about that as well, you know, the seeing truth as the adventure of your life.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, it is. And it seems trivial at the beginning when you start because you haven't done it before and you think, what how are things going to change? How are things going to change from what I was doing before? Because how could they? But you practice it. It's a practice. So you practice telling the truth. You practice telling the truth and also listening. So practicing truth and listening. Listening is the other one, right? Because if you're listening, then you can see what is necessary next. Otherwise, you can't see what's necessary next. And so then you can't make the next right move. So, yes, tell the truth and listen. And that way you'll be informed, and where you go then won't be where you think you're going to go. But it takes a while to get good at it. Like you said, before you weren't doing it. You were telling the truth. You weren't really paying attention to your thoughts so much.
Mhm.
And they talk about sins of commission and sins of omission, and sins of commission being more trouble. But I don't think that's true for sure, because sins of omission, you can you can be sinning that way and nobody will know. And if you have sins of commission, everybody sees, because those are the things that you are doing out in the world. But the things you're not doing, the only thing people will see is that your life isn't going very well. So if you're if you're committing sins of omission and you're not doing what you need, what your soul needs, what God needs you to do, well, it's just you're not going to advance like you would. So listening and following what you're interested in, and that's the same with the person that you're looking for. you have to be attracted to the person, first of all. You're not going to make Jordan and I, we met when we were very young, but we were interested in each other. We were interested in each other's activities and interested in what we talked about with each other, and he was loyal. He was loyal. When I used to come home for Christmas when I was in university, he would come over and see me. And I noticed, that he was around. And so I noticed who of the men that I was hanging out with or seeing or friends with, I noticed that he was loyal. And I knew his family. I thought his family was pretty loyal too. And I usually, when a woman is choosing a man, she's choosing a father for her children. So she might be choosing a man for herself, but really she's not. She's choosing, who is this guy going to be, and is he going to be good to my kids? That is he going to support me when I'm pregnant, and is he going to be good to my children and teach them to be good people? And so that's who we're choosing. We may be choosing someone to go to movies with, but that's not really who we're choosing. We're choosing a father for our children. And a romantic partner. Really, a father for our children and a romantic partner. That's what we're choosing.
Yeah, and sins of omission. If someone doesn't believe it, that think it's not a sin, they can just look at like what happened in the Soviet Union, when nobody speaks up, things go south really quickly. And this thing with listening, I noticed the podcasts where people are actually listening. First of all, they're rare. Joe Rogan is an example. Jordan Peterson is an example.
Mm-hmm.
You're an example. But I noticed, especially like with podcasts that haven't been there for like a very long time, so people maybe they're shy about talking or whatever, they have a script. And when you have a script,
Oh
you
yeah.
just don't listen to the person. You just wait for them to finish so that you can start talking, right? Because you have it's a monologue with pauses in between, and the pause is the other person speaking. All right. Well, and now just one question. Okay, maybe I'll put this in an
Yeah.
interview, maybe I won't, but it's just something I've been thinking. Why is it so hard to focus on living in the present? It's better if you live in the present. It's better if you not think about the future all the time. If you implement this advice to, let's say, someone who's in Nazi concentration camp, it's not a good advice, because what it took for them to survive was a vision. And I think it took for you to almost live in the future and not focus on the present moment. I think that's what helped you to survive. So maybe living in a present moment, maybe we're struggling with it because our body and mind is structured to help us persevere. It assumes that we're struggling in the present moment, and therefore we need to think about the future.
Tell me more.
Your body and your mind is already expecting you to struggle, that you have to go through something, that you're currently struggling and suffering. And therefore, your mind is programmed into thinking about the future because it's going to help you survive the present because you're struggling. Just like people in Nazi concentration camp, you had two prisoners with the same food rations, the same load of work, and one survived and the one didn't survive. And the one who survived was the one who had a vision and was almost living in the future.
No, I understand what you mean, because you have to be living for something, right? Um, and when I looked at my son, because I wasn't going to survive. I was just going to say, okay, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I have a cancer. I'm going to die. But my son, and that's another reason to have children too, because they mean more to you than anything. Once you have kids, the love that you have for each of your children is unending, and so that's a remarkable thing. And so when I talked to him, I realized that I, even though I felt that my life was finite and that I could end it whenever I wanted, it turned out that actually it isn't my life. My life is who I am to the people that love me. That's my life. And so I think that if you're in a situation that's intolerable, then you have to think about, some people who are suicidal even. Why not end it now? Why not end it now? Well, I would have looked to my son and seen how hurt he would be to have that loss and realize that I can't do that to him. I love him. And so, if you're in a situation that is intolerable, then I think that for my husband too, what he says saved his life was his love for his family and was his love for his family. And that he couldn't, even though what he was going through was intolerable and painful and he wanted to end it, the love of the people around him is what kept him. Now, if you're in a concentration camp or if you're in an intolerable situation and there's no one around, there's different, you hear of people who have, Solzhenitsyn, didn't he memorize his book?
I think he did.
I think he did.
I think he did.
And so people do those kind of things, right? They build a house
Yeah,
nail
yeah,
by nail
yeah.
and wood by wood. So they have to have something concrete to keep their mind on, to keep their mind off of thinking about their demise. And in a way, you think that those things they keep their mind on, that's a manifestation of meaning in their life, which is what's holy. And so they're somewhere holy. They have to take themselves somewhere that's holy. And that vision. So I'm sure there's a vision, and then it's what am I doing to get there? That's what they're thinking about. Yeah, and so that's meaningful, and that, yeah,
And also with suicide, it also has like application of cyclicality because you're always you're always having suicidal ideation because of your emotional state. It's never your objective circumstances because there were people who would do anything to survive in the concentration camp. And the life there wasn't exactly luxury, right? So it's always cyclical. So I think just committing suicide because of a cyclical emotion is like it's a permanent decision to a temporary problem. It's like using a nuclear bomb to kill a mosquito, right? So I think it's also important to notice that, because I mean, I guess someone who's really nihilistic and depressed, you could tell them, "What about your family?" And he's gonna reply, "Well, don't morality blackmail me," But also here is,
yeah. But you can always say not now. How
yes,
about not? How about just not
yeah,
now?
yeah.
How about just not now?
How about not now?
How about
Yeah,
just not today?
exactly,
Yeah, or just
exactly.
not this minute. How about just not this minute?
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Yeah. Boy.
I always said I believed there was hope. When Jordan was suffering, and he thought that there was nothing to be hopeful for, I would say that I had hope. I had hope that I felt like things would turn around, and I had hope. And that's why you want people around uh, that love you, is because even when you can't conjure it up yourself, if someone loves you, they can definitely conjure it up. They can see the objectivity of it, and also just have a broader view, of the moment. That it's not only this; it's more than that. We have so much to be thankful for, and to that just staying that one more minute. You never know. You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, especially since what you think is going to happen is like a figment of your imagination. So for that to be reality, it,
Yeah.
it would be quite something.
That's right.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You're awesome.
Pleasure.
You're awesome. I will definitely.
I've watched your podcast. Good luck with it, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look like you like what you're doing, and that's important.
I really do. I really do. I think
Yeah.
this is my future. I think this is sooner or later this is all I'm gonna be doing. Saying.
Yeah. Well, you're a smart lady, so I think that you have a good voice, and yeah, just find those guests. And you can always talk yourself. I haven't done that yet, but you can always what I'm thinking of doing is asking my guests questions, asking my listeners questions, and then just answering questions. You could do that too.
Oh wow,
I don't know
yeah.
if you've done that yet.
I haven't done that yet. You mean like a Q&A type of thing?
Yeah, like a Q&A.
Uh,
Yeah, and I guess those are really, really popular. Q&As are very popular.
but don't you have to like, don't people want to know things about you? Because I don't know, I feel like if I do that now at the beginning, it's gonna be like nobody cares, you know what I mean?
How long have you had a podcast for?
Started last year. Let's see, when was the first? A little bit over a year, yeah, a little bit over a year.
Okay.
So,
Well, whenever you're ready, though, I think that's a good thing to do. And you can always talk to someone and answer questions with someone.
oh,
But you
okay,
know, say we're gonna answer questions from my listeners.
okay, that's
So
okay.
there's different ways to do it. I'm thinking of playing with that. I haven't done it yet, but I think that'd be fun.
And hey, if you need a guest to do that with, you know who to call. Anyway.
There you go.
I'm just
There
kidding.
you
Not
go.
really. There you go. Alrighty, Tammy. Where can people find you?
Well, I think I start. We had a slow start.
True. All right. So, where can people find you?
I have. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Rumble. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. Tammy Peterson podcast.
Alrighty, then. Well,
Pretty simple.
I will promote the hell out of it. Cool.
Why, thank you.
Can't say that, but I do know this.